happened with that?
Yeah, what that all about?
That's because they don't understand us.
We don't know what's going on.
And they want to understand.
Well, I invited men, and I said, look, if you really want to understand some of this, you might want to come to the talk, or at least send your daughters here. So,
yeah.
So today we're going to talk about women and hormone balance, and why hormones get out of balance. And I think that, if you look at our culture, I get a lot of female patients with hormonal issues, a lot of them, okay? And some of them come to me for that, or that's one of like 5 things they come to me for. So I want to explain tonight, how the female body works and how hormones get out of balance. And so let's just get right into it. First of all, I want to ask, if I first did this question for a church here, or this seminar for a church here in town, and so I ask them these questions, and I'll ask you the same thing. Does a body have the capacity to be well?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
You say it does. Okay, it does. Okay. So, does a body have the capacity to heal if it's not well?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, everybody agrees with
Right.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, what causes the body to be sick, and what causes the body to be well? In other words, what causes all this disease in our culture? Because there's plenty of it. And what causes it? What causes people to be healthy? Why do we have some people that are like 50 that are healthy, they do well, they're vibrant? We have some people that are 50 that are just falling apart. Why is that?
Alcohol. Cigarette.
That could be, yeah.
Not taking care of themselves.
But I just want to say there's reasons for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's all. There's reasons for that, and so it depends. We're going to look through a specific lens today. Now, there's 2 lenses that you can look through when it comes to health. You can look through the lens of pharmaceuticals, or you can look through the lens of what does it take to be healthy. Now, let's talk about this in terms of female hormones, for example. If you take your average 15-year-old that's having problems with her cycle or her monthly hormone cycles, and she goes to a gynecologist, what's he most likely to do?
Put her on birth control.
Yeah.
Treat it as a birth control pill deficiency.
Yeah.
So any 15-year-old, any 16-year-old that's having hormonal issues and sees a gynecologist is going to be treated like she was born with a birth control pill deficiency. Okay? Do you think that's true?
Nope.
No.
No, it's not true. They weren't born with a birth control pill deficiency. In fact, when you're 15, 16 years old, I mean, you should be pretty healthy at that age.
Right.
You shouldn't need birth control pills to, quote, straighten out your cycle. So the idea there is we're going to give a 15-year-old woman who should be healthy a pill that raises her estrogen to incredibly high levels. That doesn't make sense. Okay, so let's look at a different lens. So when we talk about what confers health, we're going to look at the triangle. This is a health triangle. There's biochemical, structural, neurological is the base of this pyramid, and spiritual and emotional. Now, can anybody think of anything else that other than these that could cause health, or an imbalance of these that could cause sickness? Anybody think of anything? So
many of them fit under those categories when I think about some of those, because you got environmental.
Yeah.
You have hereditary things that are going on in your body. And that kind of fits in a lot of those there. But
Yeah, so environmental would definitely fit under biochemical.
Uh-huh.
Hereditary, probably hereditary problems are not responsible for very many health issues. Very few, actually. So
But wouldn't it help you how to respond?
it could, like doing like a genetic profile.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it could. Okay.
Or to heal better or quicker, or would your genetics help you with that?
Yes. I mean, like for example, genetics have to do with propensities towards things.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So let's say, your mother, your grandmother, and your great-grandmother died of breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a genetic propensity
Right,
for that.
right.
So does that mean you have to get it?
No.
No. So you could change your lifestyle to where you could keep that gene turned off.
Right.
Okay. So genes can be turned on and off depending on this stuff right here. And that's called epigenetics, and I actually talk about that in a lot of my talks. So your genes, just because you have a genetic propensity for something, doesn't mean that those genes have to be expressed. So it's our lifestyle that expresses genes. So you have genes like for a heart attack. Let's say both your parents died of heart attacks, both your grandparents died of heart attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean you have to die of a heart attack? No, because there's things that you can do that can keep your heart healthy, that those genes don't have to be expressed. So we know that sickness occurs when there's an imbalance in these things. It doesn't matter where the imbalance occurs. I mean, right now, and we'll talk about this later, what are the two major emotions going on in our society right now?
Fear.
Coronavirus.
Fear.
What's the other one?
Anger.
Anger. Fear and anger, or fear and rage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a huge imbalance
Right.
right here in our culture, okay? And so those things alone, what do fear and anger do? How do they affect biochemistry, for example?
They elevate your stress.
Elevate your
Mhm,
stress.
right.
Good job, yeah. Which
Blood
elevates
pressure.
cortisol,
Yeah.
which lowers your immune system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has a big can have a big effect on it. How about structural neurological? How would that affect that?
Well, wouldn't stress kind of cause some of that in the neurological area, or?
I mean,
Well, fear and anger is a
Yeah.
fight or flight. You're in
Yeah.
fight or flight.
Right.
Yeah.
So it elevates your sympathetic nervous
Yes.
system.
Mm-hmm.
When your sympathetic nervous system is at a constant state of fight or flight,
Mhm.
that leads to sickness and disease. And Hans Selye, the guy who discovered stress, it also keeps your muscles tight and tense,
Yeah.
which
That's
causes subluxations.
Mhm.
So yeah, absolutely. So out of the 7 systems, we're gonna be talking about the communication system today. Now, if you look at the communication system, it actually consists of 3 different things: our nervous system, our neurotransmitters, and our hormones. Now, I'm not gonna talk much about our neurotransmitters today, but if we look at our nervous system communicates with all the organs in the body, and all the organs in the body communicate with the nervous system. What does this have to do with a woman's health, with a woman's hormonal health? Or am I just throwing that in there just to get chiropractic in this talk? What does this have to do with it?
Well, don't hormones have to have a connection to the nervous system? I mean, to do whatever it is they do?
Sure, absolutely have a connection to the nervous system. What else has a connection to the nervous system?
The spine.
What?
The
The
spine.
spine?
Yeah, but so your ovaries, your uterus, and your fallopian tubes are all connected, wired in to the nervous system, into your spine, and then into your brain. Let me tell you a story. This happened just this week, okay? I have a young female that sees me. She's in her 20s. And she said, I need to tell you something. She'd been seeing me for about 3 months pretty regularly now. She says, she says, I used to have, and she came into me for structural issues, for headaches, neck pain, low back pain, kind of typical things chiropractor sees. And she says, I used to have heavy, painful, long cycles. And she said, I had those for years. And she says, I never thought that I could ever be normal. And she says, since I've been coming into you, my cycles are really pretty normal now. They're hardly any pain at all. And they're what they should be. Now, she hasn't taken any supplements.
Should have been to him a long time ago.
Yeah, I've not sold this woman any supplements, haven't talked to her about her cycles. She just brought it up, okay? And I said, well, why do you think that is? And she says, well, I think it's because of what you've been doing. And she's right. So when we fixed this, her cycles, her hormones got better. Now they get better in a week? No. No, I mean, she's been seeing me for 3 months now. But it took time to get it better, but we got it better without doing anything else except adjusting her. It's all I did. And I didn't even know I was fixing it. She brought it up to me. So I'm not just throwing this in here to get chiropractic into this talk. This is the real deal when it comes to hormones. Now, is this all there is? No. But with some women it is. With some women, this is all you need to do over time, and they get better. Now let's look at some other things. Let's look at the hormonal system and how it works in a female. You have the hypothalamus and the pituitary are the glands that stimulate ovarian production. So this is a pituitary gland right here, okay? And this is the hypothalamus. Now you notice the hypothalamus looks like a funnel, okay? So it actually funnels things into the pituitary gland. So what does it funnel into the pituitary gland? Well, it funnels in like emotions, okay? So anytime we have an emotion, that goes through the hypothalamus and it's funneled into the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland tells the other glands in the body how to work. It tells the ovaries when to make, when to release an egg, and when to and when it's ready to release. Okay, it tells your adrenal glands to make cortisol. It tells your thyroid to make thyroxine, T3 and T4. So your pituitary is the master gland of the body in the brain, and it is influenced by the hypothalamus, which plays a part in many essential functions of the body, like body temperature, thirst, appetite, weight control, emotions, sleep cycle, sex drive, childbirth, blood pressure, production of digestive juices, balancing of body fluids. All of this is influenced by the hypothalamus, then, which influences the pituitary gland, which tells our hormones to work. So, do you think that emotions might affect a woman's cycle? Absolutely they do, okay? Via the hypothalamus and the pituitary. So, here we got the hypothalamus influences the pituitary, tells the pituitary to produce follicle-stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, causes ovulation, produces estrogen, progesterone, and affects the uterus, which then feeds back up into the pituitary gland and lets the pituitary know when there's enough hormones, okay? So it's when this system gets imbalanced that women have problems. So this is called the HPO axis, hypothalamic pituitary ovarian axis. Now we have the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, we have the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis, we have the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis in men. So it's the HPO axis in women. Now, there's two hormones which can throw this whole thing off, okay? And these are the 800-pound gorillas of hormones. in human beings. Number one is insulin. Number two is cortisol. These two hormones can override everything else in the body. So insulin, secreted from the pancreas, it's a fat storage hormone which regulates blood sugar. Okay, I'll go into this a little bit more in the talk. Cortisol is secreted from where? The adrenal glands, right? So, like, this is part of the HPA axis, hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. Cortisol is a stress hormone, okay? It also assists in blood sugar regulation. Now, all other hormones, when compared to these, are minor hormones. So your thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, and your sex hormones are all secondary hormones to insulin and cortisol. Now, sex hormones in a woman are made in her ovaries, the adrenal glands, and fat cells. Okay, those are the three areas where hormones are made. Okay, so let me just give you a hypothetical here. Let's say a woman has a hysterectomy at 35. Now she's not. They take her ovaries out, and this is gone. So where's her hormones going to be made?
Your fat cells and adrenal glands.
Primarily adrenals, okay? Primarily, yeah, she'll get some here. You don't want many hormones made here, okay? You don't want, and I'll show you why in a minute. Your adrenal glands. So if this woman has been under a tremendous amount of stress and her adrenal glands are tired, she doesn't need more ovaries, what's your capacity to make hormones? Not very good.
Limited.
Okay, very, very limited. Okay? So, hormone balance is deeply connected to the following 6 things: the food we eat, exercise we get, the weight that we carry, the amount of stress we have, the flow of nerve supply to the reproductive organs, and the toxicity we ingest. Those are the 6 things that affect hormones in women. Now, balanced hormones allows you to sleep well, have energy, have a strong sex drive, have a strong immune system, have a normal functioning digestive system. And I'll tell you something, when a male that's 35 years old comes into me and says, I'm 35 and I just really don't have a sex drive, that's a huge red flag. 35-year-old male, are you kidding me? They got to be pumping out testosterone like there's no tomorrow. They have no sex drive, there's a problem, okay? So, they have no energy, there's a problem. And so these hormones allow us to do this, allows a woman to have this. So the beginnings of hormone function can often begin in adolescence. Why would hormone dysfunctions occur in adolescence? Years of stress, poor eating, and subluxation stress in the nervous system. We'll talk about eating here in just a minute. Do you think teenagers generally eat well? No, they don't. What kind of foods do they choose?
Fast food.
Pizza, French fries, burgers, mac and cheese,
Soda pop.
soda. Do those foods or food-like substances, can your body make healthy things out of those?
No.
Absolutely not. Okay, so it begins when they're young. You show me a young female who eats a healthy diet, and I'll show you somebody's probably going to have way fewer hormonal issues than most people. Now, insulin, again, is primary a fat storage hormone. Now, insulin goes up whenever we eat, and if we eat a lot of sugar, if we have a diet that's chronic in a high carbohydrates, your insulin starts to elevate over time. And what insulin does is it creates fat. Insulin is a fat storage hormone. So that's why eating lots of refined carbohydrates with high insulin levels makes you fat. And if the insulin stays high, you can't get rid of that fat. It locks it in the cell like a lock and key, like a safe. Now, fat produces its own estrogen. Okay, remember we showed you how the 3 areas of the body that produce hormones? Fat produces its own estrogen. So when you raise your insulin levels, you load up the cells with fat, it produces its own estrogen, and you get estrogen dominance, estrogen imbalance. So I don't care how well your glands are working, you have high levels of insulin, you're going to have high levels of estrogen. So symptoms of elevated insulin are chronic weight gain, you can't lose weight, you can't burn calories, you're tired all the time, you're hungry all the time. Elevated insulin is like fat fertilizer, okay? So elevated insulin contributes to all of our disease in our culture. Major heart disease, hypertension, stroke, cancer, type 2 diabetes. I've never seen anybody with cancer that didn't have elevated insulin, okay? Now, high insulin is cells stuffed with angry fat, which causes elevated estrogen and estrogen dominance. Estrogen dominance causes what? Cervical dysplasia, depression, fibroids, breast and uterine fibroids, decreased sex drive, uterine, breast, and prostate cancer, osteoporosis, hair loss, all of this stuff from elevated insulin. So high estrogen, because of elevated insulin, because too much fat in the cells, tends to thicken bile over time, which causes what? Gallbladder disease and cholecystectomy. So how can we lower insulin? Remember, insulin and estrogen tend to go up together, okay? High insulin, estrogen imbalance. All that sugar, all that sweet stuff that these kids are eating, all this white flour elevates insulin, causes estrogen imbalance. We lower insulin with fasting, avoiding sugar and refined carbohydrates, high-intensity interval training, weight training, resistance, specific medical foods, which we have here, and whole food supplements, okay? So you can do intermittent fasting. So, you wait till noon or 1 o'clock to eat, and you don't eat after 7 at night, okay? That will help lower insulin. Now, what about cortisol? Cortisol gets imbalanced when we have too much stress. And cortisol goes up. It's our stress hormone made in the adrenal glands. If cortisol goes up and your body has to make excess cortisol, it has to pull it from somewhere. So you know what happens? Progesterone goes down. Okay, so progesterone is a hormone that balances estrogen. So when somebody's under a lot of stress, when you take a young female who's under a lot of stress for whatever it is, and that cortisol is going up and up and up due to her stress level, that's made from, your body takes that and out of what it would make progesterone with. It's called pregnenolone steal syndrome. And it makes cortisol out of it. Her progesterone goes down. That causes an imbalance in the estrogen progesterone balance, and what happens? She starts having painful long cycles. Okay, so what types of stress response will interfere with your hormonal balance? Emotional stress, dietary stress, pain, and inflammatory stress. So if a young lady is not eating a very good diet, eating a lot of sugar, a lot of processed food, the wrong kind of fat. Do you know what our sex hormones are made of? Anybody know?
Cholesterol?
Cholesterol. They're all made out of cholesterol. So if she's eating an extremely low-fat diet or the wrong kind of fat, she won't have the raw material to make hormones, okay? So if she's having a lot of emotional stress at home and eating a lot of the wrong kind of foods, it's going to put a lot of stress on the adrenals. So what kind of stress can negatively impact the way our body's hormones function? Too much work, all the things that are going on in our culture right now. People are losing their jobs, they're having relationship stress, they're sitting at home watching movies and eating food, binging on food, all of this, hidden inflammation, exposure to chemicals and toxins. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Chronic stress, elevated cortisol, low progesterone can lead to endometriosis. Doesn't always, but it can. Okay? Now there's some other things that can cause, like uterine fibroids to grow, and one of those things, and I didn't put it in here, is iodine deficiency. Your ovaries and your uterus and your breast tissue is very, very iodine dependent. So we tend to be iodine deficient in the Midwest. So any kind of iodine deficiency can also contribute to this whole problem right here. So how do we heal our adrenal glands? Well, we manage our stress. I mean, there's a whole lot of things, praying, spending time with God, eating a whole food diet, avoiding sugar, alcohol, nicotine, artificial sweeteners, and too much caffeine, getting rest. Sleep is very, very important. And we have herbs such as ashwagandha, ginseng, rhodiola, licorice that are in our formulas for the adrenal glands, and chiropractic care will help heal the adrenals. So here's another thing, is exposures to chemicals that act like estrogen in the body. This is a big deal. So commercially raised chicken, beef, and dairy is exposed to bovine growth hormone, which is a xenoestrogen. It acts like estrogen in the body. A lot of our personal care products contain parabens. They enter the skin and go directly to the tissue without being detoxed in the liver. They can upset the hormonal balance. Phthalates, which are used in plastics, they all act like estrogen in the body. Foods that contain soy and soy protein isolate contain estrogen. Dryer sheets are loaded with chemicals that with estrogen to make your clothes feel fresh and soft. Birth control pills, which a lot of women take, and conventional estrogen replacement therapy. BPA, which lines the cans of a lot of the food that we eat. It's a powerful xenoestrogen. And some disposable menstrual products contain toxic chemicals which act like estrogen in the body. I mean, you just go through this. It's like, how do we avoid it? It gets depressing after a while. Here's a December 2018 article in the Journal of Human Reproduction stated the following. Girls exposed to chemicals found in shampoo, toothpaste, and soap may hit puberty earlier, even if their only exposure is through the products their mother used when they were pregnant. This is troubling news because scientists have linked the early onset of puberty with great risk of mental illness, breast and ovarian cancer, and testicular cancer in boys. So using a more natural health care product would be really helpful. Hormone imbalance usually begins in adolescence. Poor eating choices, pizza, ice cream, French fries cause liver toxicity. The liver has to process excess hormones. If the liver cannot process excess estrogen, what happens? It accumulates in the body and just floats around, and it wreaks havoc on the body. When I see a young female or any female that has cycle problems, one of the first things I do is I put them on a 21-day detox, get their liver detoxed for this reason right here. And then we're going to do, I do something else I'll show you in a minute. Freckles are an indicator of excess copper in the body. Usually excess copper means too much estrogen. Okay, how do we treat hormone imbalances? Number one, a whole body approach that addresses all the things we talked about. Eating, exercise, sleep, lifestyle, all of that. We want to address underlying stress. If the only thing you do is measure female hormones with addressing the underlying causes, it's not going to work. Just not, okay? So one of the things I want to do is I would rather do an insulin test than a female hormone test. Because if I suspect somebody's insulin level is high, we got to fix that. That has to be fixed. I get people exercising, balancing adrenal, checking adrenals and balancing their hormones using our adrenal formulas is another thing that I do. Rarely, it is very, very rare that I give bioidentical hormones because we want to fix the things that are causing the imbalances rather than replace something the body should be making on its own. You know, we get women to avoid toxic chemicals, and you can really detoxify your body by eating a lot of cruciferous vegetables and liver support products, detox foot baths like we have here, far infrared sauna. All of these things can be really helpful. Now, here's a crucial step. You nourish the HPO axis. We use hypothalamus, pituitrophin, and OVXP. These are 3 products that we use to nourish the HPO axis. Usually, I use these products after I put somebody on a 21-day detox. We detox the liver first, then we nourish the HPO organs. Now, here's some relevant tests that we do in our office. We do fasting insulin, adrenal hormone testing, food intolerance testing to look at dietary stresses. If you are eating foods you're intolerant to, you are beating up your adrenals every day. So getting people off of things like gluten, dairy, things that they're intolerant to. Hair analysis, which measures minerals, adrenal function, and sugar metabolism. Cycling female hormone panel. I'll only do this as a last resort, okay? And postmenopausal hormone panel for women who are past menopause but are having problems, hormonal issues. So, that's what I do in my office. Any questions about anything that I've gone over? Did that help you understand why so many women have hormonal issues? Okay. So, the best of all possible worlds, I'll tell you what would be, is to get a woman under chiropractic care for at least 3 to 4 months first before you do any of this. Get the nerve supply and correct the subluxation so the nerve supply to the organs can work right, and see if that is an issue. Is that an issue all the time? Not necessarily, but it is a lot of the time. You know, a lot of times they need other help, from some of the other things that I talked about. But I'd like to get them under chiropractic care for at least 3 to 4 months, see what happens, and then start working on some of this other stuff. Good. Well, thank you. Yeah, you have a question, Terry?
I have a question. A woman has had a lot of children. Does that make any difference with the hormonal balance? Are they more apt to be hormonally balanced?
A woman that's had a lot of children is more apt to be mineral deficient. Because those kids pull the minerals out of their body. So I'd rather do a hair mineral analysis on them. Maybe an adrenal stress index test. Depends on where they're at. But they're mineral deficient.
Especially with teeth and, it pulls the calcium out of the teeth.
Calcium, magnesium, all of it,
Sometimes
imbalances.
iron.
So we'd want to look at what's the mineral balance and give them the minerals they need so their body can heal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Good. Well, we're 4 minutes past. I like to finish on time, so thank you so much for listening to this talk. If you have any questions or anything, you can